Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the webinar series by IITACB. So as you know, IITACB is set up by IIT alumni from across all IITs to enable networking amongst IIT alumni and also to establish collaboration between IITs and industries. So IITACB is also recognized by MHRD, and we have a building here in Bangalore. So for today's webinar, our speaker is Virendra Gupta, who is also known as Viru. He completed his master's degree from a School of Management in IIT Bombay. He's the founder of Verse Innovation, a content technology platform company that powers two iconic made in India consumer-facing brands, Dailyhunt and Josh. Virendra comes with a rich career experience where he has performed important roles in new product launches, contributing significantly to India's startup ecosystem. In December 2020, Verse Innovation became the first Indian unicorn in tech for local languages. It was born out of the mission to empower the next billion Indians who are coming online to consume content based on their consumption preferences. Today, Verse Innovation's proprietary technology platforms powers 300 million plus users on Dailyhunt and 115 million plus monthly active users on Josh to consume and create content in their local languages. So before coming to Verse Innovation to the world, Virendra took up the role of Director Telecom at Trialty, where he was responsible for incubating and establishing consumer internet and telecom product business in India. Virendra is also recipient of GSMA Award 2013, and he was Influencer of the Year 2018 and EY Entrepreneur of the Year Award. He was finalist in 2020. So this talk will be moderated by Dr. Sri Ramurthy, who has completed his PhD from IIT Madras in 2009 and joined the Department of Electrical Engineering at IIT Hyderabad. He's currently an associate professor in the same department. His research interests include signal processing, speech analysis, machine learning, and deep learning. So today's talk will be co-hosted along with me with Dr. Shushila Venkatraman. And for audience, post your questions in Q&A box, so that will be taken up later in the talk or during the talk. So over to Virendra.
Thank you, Professor Abha Mishra. Thank you for your kind introduction. Very grateful to be here in front of this coveted forum and to talk about my journey. Just give me a moment. I'll share my screen and then kick off the presentation. So thank you very much, guys, for taking time out on a Sunday morning, or people who are logging in from different parts of the world. I hope to make this session insightful, entertaining, and informative. Feel free to post your questions in the chat box, and look forward to an interactive session over next 60 to 90 minutes. Maybe I'll start with a little bit of my introduction, Professor Abha talked about me being a founder of Verse Innovation and what my company does. But just before that, I would say more than the founder of Verse Innovation, I would like to classify myself as a curious mind with an adventurous soul. And then I'm an entrepreneur as well. And the reason why I'm saying this is because over the next 60 to 90 minutes, I'm going to cover my journey in two parts. the first part where I'm going to talk about my journey and, how I landed up where I landed up in building this business and what were the twists and turns which happened during this journey. And in the second part of my presentation, I'm going to talk about, the 6 to 7 fundamental modes we build in our business and challenges we overcome to reach the point where we are. Okay, this is, yeah. So, I mean, just to rewind, I'm 50-year-old, 50-year-old entrepreneur. I grew up in a small place called Jodhpur in Rajasthan. Family was a middle-class family. My father was a professor of physics. My mother was a housewife. Like people of my age would relate, the focus of education was to get a good job. And during those periods, the focus of education was either get a government job or go to US. I'm talking way back in 1994 types when I passed out of my engineering college. By the way, none of those happened to me as I passed out of my engineering college. My first part of life in Jodhpur was about staying in a business community where where there were a lot of business people, and I have two very fond memories of my childhood during that period. One memory which is etched very, very heavily into my in my mind is me waiting in a balcony. Our house was in the first floor, in a small place in Jodhpur, and every morning we used to wait for the newspaper hawker to throw the newspaper into my balcony. And at that point in time, Rajasthan Patrika used to come, and we used to scramble and rush to read the paper and see what's happening around the world. So that memory has never kind of went out of my mind. And the second memory, which is etched very, very heavily into my memory, which is etched very, very heavily into my mind, is during Diwali days, none of my friends who were in the business family used to come and celebrate Diwali during normal evening hours. They used to be all helping their dads who were entrepreneurs in the business, because there was huge peak load in their business at that period of time. So even before, Jeff Bezos perhaps invented customer centricity, or even we, techies thought about peak loads. If I reflect back, I could see how my friends used to assist their small businesses which their parents ran in terms of managing customers and managing peak loads during Diwali season. Well, after doing the initial schooling in that area, I moved to the university colony, which was a very, very exhilarating experience in Jodhpur, and, got in touch with a lot of smart people. People who were around me were IIT toppers. Ashwini Vaishnav, who is today the minister, for railways and, IT telecom, was in that area. So that environment kind of, drove you to a lot of excellence. And I got selected for IIT Bombay when I was appearing for my engineering test. By the way, I didn't join IIT Bombay. I joined MBM Engineering College, Jodhpur. At that point of time, it was a very, very bad decision, it seemed. But once I look back in hindsight, I think that was a decision which perhaps changed my life forever, because I did not go to US. A lot of my friends who went to IIT went to US, because that was the most logical choice and the best choice at that point of time. Because I didn't go to IIT at that point of time, I eventually went to do my master's there. And when I was doing master's, the telecom licenses were being opened up, and I joined telecom company. So by chance, I stayed back in India. And from 94 onwards, I got to participate in this great growth story of India. And I think to me, that was a great, great pivotal point in life, where by chance, not by my conscious effort, I stayed back in India and I got a chance to participate in the growth story of India. So went to IIT, as Professor Abha said. I went to IIT Bombay to do my master's. I did my School of Management, which was a new course out there. At that point of time, the telecom licenses were being given away. And I joined the company called BPL Mobile. Now, I joined this company on day one, and I go to their office and I see that that the whole office is one floor. And there's a switching center, there's a billing center, there's a collection center, there's a customer support, there's everything on one floor. Now you cannot get a more scrappy, startup like that, in life, where our imagination of telecom companies in world is they are big companies with a lot of big system and processes. But if you go back and see that all these companies were small and started up very, very small, garage-like startup in those days. And I was fortunate enough to participate in that ride. So I worked in BPL Mobile. I worked closely with the promoters of telecom companies and BPL Mobile and the leadership team, and launched a couple of interesting products and built a couple of interesting businesses. One of the key things which I launched in BPL Mobile was the prepaid card. And I don't know how much of you would remember that during those days, the telecom costs and the pricing of phones and handsets and the calls were very, very expensive. To get a mobile telephone connection, you got to give your income tax return, your credit history, your proof of address, and so on and so forth. And as all of you would know, that India doesn't have a lot of population who would pass their credit score. So the telecom penetration was stuck because of this key thing. By launching prepaid, we actually opened up the market, and telecom became like an FMCG product where people could go to a nearby Kirana store and go mobile. So actually, by launching the prepaid card for the first time, I learned how a tech can impact the lives of people. And I saw the telecom market just growing through the roof. During those stints in telecom companies, I worked on a lot of interesting projects, like building local language vernacular recognition system, prepaid e-top up, worked with promoters to translate their business vision into products, and learned a lot about Bharat. And that's where my touch base with Bharat happened, which eventually led me to do what I did eventually. So did spend 14, 15 years, working for multiple telecom companies, BPL Mobile, Airtel, a mobile VAS company on mobile, and then eventually joined a company called Trilogy, where I was incubating telecom businesses for that company. The entrepreneurial itch was very much there in my mind, and I was possessed by the idea of solving problems of Bharat. And one day I woke up and said, I'm going to leave everything and jump to entrepreneurship. By the way, that sounded like a very bad idea at that point of time. I was 36 years old. I was getting very decently paid, and all my friends at that point of time, they were enjoying life and, were planning for next car, vacation. I went to my house owner and said, I need a 6-month rent-free lease for you because I'm building my business. So went through the journey of, incubating Verse, and in initial days, we were building value-added services business, which was more about, solving information needs over SMS, USSD, and eventually pivot to what today is Dailyhunt. So broadly, look, I mean, what I covered in last few, I would say last 5 to 7 minutes was, was not born to be an entrepreneur. The era where I grew up, education was a key thing to get a good life, which was true for most of us during that period. There were options after doing, engineering to go to a government job or go to US. Somehow, as things happened, didn't end up doing either of them, and was lucky enough that telecom revolution was happening. And when I was doing my IIT masters, I did a couple of projects in telecom auction pricing, and that's why I just navigated to the telecom industry, and that gave me a leapfrog of building products for Bharat, which eventually led to where I am today. and I think this is a key point which I talk about a lot whenever I'm talking to people around, because it's not always that you have a great idea and you're going to jump to that idea immediately, but it's also about just doing things, be in the thick of things, and a lot of paths come your way as you're building business or products. Anyway, so took the leap, left my job, told you about how tough it was. My wife was pregnant with the second kid. My landlord was kind enough to give me a 6-month, no rent house. Started building the product, scale the business, which was, operator based information services business, and was doing it nicely from 2007 to 2011, right? But it was all about content businesses where we were delivering information services through operators to end consumers. Somewhere around about in 2011 and 12, we came across a very interesting company, which was Eterno Infotech, which was building, which had solved for a very interesting use case of rendering of a local language font on a mobile phone. And by the way, at that point of time, way back in 2010 and 11, if we were to go to anybody in the country or anybody in US or anybody in India or talk to any VC and talk about local language, or talk about the market of local language, or talk about internet of local language, we would get ridiculed badly. I think everybody would go and say internet is only for English speaking people. Local language people don't have, they don't need internet. The first challenge we faced during that period was people thought that nobody speaks local language in India, which was a very, very weird, I would say, outlook which people had. And when I say people, means people who are, venture capitalists, and you don't blame them because, it was early days of India growth and India internet penetration. So the first thing when we went out and talked about our business was explaining to people that we are solving for Bharat and we are solving for local language users. But people said the internet is only meant for English speaking people. And by the way, the operating system at that point of time only supported English language, which means that way back in 2010 and 11, if you were to send a WhatsApp or an SMS or whatever, or an email in Hindi, Tamil, Malayalam, Kannada, or any of the Indian languages, they would appear as gibberish on the mobile phone screen. So even the handset manufacturers thought that the Dravidian script is not worth investing into, and they were only supporting English script. And we saw a great opportunity at that point of time. And it's not that we had a great vision saying that India market is like huge market in terms of local language. We didn't have McKinsey or BCG reports, but coming from where I came from and coming from what I had seen in my telecom journey, where we had touched the middle of the Bharat, I knew that India is all about local languages. And when we start digging a little bit deeper into that, we found that the largest newspaper in the country is not an English newspaper. The largest newspaper in the country was Dainik Jagran and Dainik Bhaskar, which were Hindi newspapers. Malayalam Manorama was the third largest newspaper or fourth largest newspaper, which was Malayalam. English newspapers came way down in category, way down in the grade to about 10th or 11th, right? So this is the information we knew intuitively, and that's why when we came across this company called Eterno Infotech, which was building a local language font rendering engine, we worked with them closely and eventually acquired them to build a local language news app, which today we call is Dailyhunt. So that was a big pivotal point, I would say, in the journey where we put our bets on solving a local language font problem and building a business around that. So Genesis was solving a font rendering engine, and then we launched an app on Nokia Symbian phone and eventually on Android and iOS, and scaled that app and business into 15 languages, went around in the country, educating the publisher ecosystem to come on board one by one. And it took a lot of time for us to do that and eventually build a large business around it. And I'm going to talk some of the numbers later on. I'm going to talk a little bit about the numbers later on. But that was one pivotal point, I would say, the first pivotal point, I would say, and again, recapping a little bit in the history, pivotal point, not going to IIT, staying in Jodhpur MBA Engineering College, not having an option to go to US, eventually went to IIT to do my master's. Telecom licensing and telecom sector was opening up, mobile telephony was coming up. I ended up doing some projects on telecom auction pricing. So there was a natural flow of moving to telecom industry for a job. Telecom industry was a startup, scrappy industry, learned a lot of bottoms-up thing and top-down things to build product and businesses, learned about driving engagement in Bharat, eventually led to building, and launching Verse. As we were doing this, came across this interesting local language font problem, used it, solved the content aggregation problem at that point of time, went to publisher one by one, faced a lot of rejections, both from publishers and from VC ecosystem who didn't believe in the power of Bharat at that point of time. Scaled it nicely from 2011 to 2016. Raised, a little bit of, VC money from marquee investors, and we were building this business very, very nicely. So local language business was a non-sexy business, if I may use that word at that point of time, between 2012 to 2016, and we were growing faster than market. In 2016, a tsunami came, and the tsunami was called Geo. And that tsunami actually lowered and all of you know what happened when the tsunami came. The data prices came down drastically, the handset prices came down drastically, and suddenly a market which was an internet market which was primarily English became a heavy local language market, because people across nook and corner of the country could afford mobile phones, could afford data connectivity. And suddenly the same market, which was non-sexy, which was non-valuable, became very, very valuable in the world. India became one of the biggest, largest, fastest growing, local language internet market. I was a conservative guy, and I was building the business in very, very, I would say cash conservative mode. I acquired Eterno Infotech from the proceeds and from the profits which I had built, by doing value-added services for first 5 years of business. And when Geo came, companies both from China and US came into India and were fighting for the mind share and revenue share of local language users. That's the time when I actually, bumped into Umang, who was running the Facebook, and he was growing Facebook in a very nice manner. And I actually went to him and asked him, what have you done to grow Facebook at such large volume and veracity? And he was looking to touch base with me to figure out that what am I doing in local language space, because he knew that the initial euphoria of growing very fast will end up soon if you don't cater to Bharat. So we both came together at that point of time with a vision that India is a very, very huge local language market, and there is a business to be built which can take on the duopoly of Google and Facebook and build a large business which is made in India for India. And as he left Facebook, I was lucky enough that he came on board as a co-founder, and we pivoted our business into kind of a family of apps, and it's been a dream ride since then. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the modes and the numbers subsequently. And then we both came together. We are building Dailyhunt into very nicely. The business was growing, and in 2000, and the COVID struck, and then the ban on Chinese app happened. And that was one more pivotal point in the history of company, where we said, we are a leader in local language users. We are a leader for local language users to engage with us. And we thought it's incumbent on us to launch a short video app. And as the ban on Chinese app happened, we launched Josh in a couple of weeks, which is the fastest growing short video app and is doing very, very well. And both Dailyhunt and Josh, target the middle of the Bharat, the local language users of Bharat, and we have been growing the business very nicely. And over a period of time, during the COVID year to 2022, we raised $805 million, and today we are a $5 billion value company with a revenue. We clocked revenue of $130 million last year, hoping to clock around $240 million this year, and eventually becoming the largest Indian local language player in this segment. As Dailyhunt is the largest local language news aggregator. We have about 240 million monthly active users on our app. People come in to Dailyhunt to read news, information, sports, health, technology and variety of content in 15 languages. And this is used by people in nook and corner of India as well as abroad. Josh is the fastest growing short video app. Josh is a very tough business, and we face a lot of competition from companies like Instagram and YouTube Shorts on this. But we have developed a great AI engine and a creator ecosystem by which we have been able to retain customers, and Josh has started monetizing recently. Public Wipe is our third app, which is like a local TV, which can give people a lot of hyper local news in their own dialect. It's primarily video and audio led, and this product is also doing very, very well, to give people a lot of hyper local use cases. At a very, very broad level, I would say we are a company which have cracked the code of, engagement of middle of Bharat. And middle of Bharat is what a lot of companies don't understand. And we have cracked the code of engagement of middle of Bharat and monetization. And with our moats, we have built both on the creator ecosystem side, both on AI, ML, and ad tech, and both in terms and thirdly in terms of team. We are on a path. I will not bore you with some of the charts here, but we're on a path eventually to basically to reach about. Just let me go to the chart. So we are on path to reach a 350 million run rate in FY24 exit ARR, and we have hit a 200 million run rate in FY23. So I'll pause here broadly, and my first part was to talk to you about my journey, talk to you about how I ended up building the business, what did we go through while building this business. I'll pause here. I'll stop my sharing. I'll invite Sri Ramamurthy to talk and ask me a few questions if there are, and then I'll move to the second part.
Hello. Thanks, Dr. Virendra, for sharing your journey till now. I have one question before going with the audience questions. So in the beginning itself, you mentioned you introduced yourself as adventurous soul. Okay? But even then, leaving a fat salary job and job security and going forward with a startup is not easy. So what analysis did you do, to ensure that you will succeed in this startup? And do you have any fallback plans at that time?
Actually, very interesting question. And, I think if you try to analyze rationally, I'm assuming a lot of people here are engineers, mathematicians, and, people who look at stats and maths to figure out decisions of life. If you statistically analyze doing a startup, you will come with an answer which is say, don't do a startup, because 99.9% of startups fail, right? And I think that's the real answer. So I had no fallback plan when I was doing this. I was just possessed about this idea of solving problems of middle Bharat and bridging the digital divide. I had no fallback plan. My father was a professor of physics. He was retired at that point of time. My wife was pregnant. She was not working. She had left her job because, she was on the family way, and I had a daughter who was older. And I could no longer continue to do what I was doing because I was not enjoying it, and I was possessed about the idea of doing this. And by the way, during that period, entrepreneurship was a taboo. See, today, if you do entrepreneurship, it's perfectly fine. In fact, today it's reverse. People are saying, hey, if you're not an entrepreneur, you're wasting time, which is also very wrong. So we have swung from one side of the table to other side of the table. So I had no fallback plan. The only thing which I had in my pocket was my experience of building products for middle of Bharat and my intuition that this is going to be a large market, and having a problem statement in my mind and having the courage to imagine that I'll be able to solve that problem statement, and having it and basically knowing people who could partner with me in solving this problem. So these were my, I would say, moats or SWOT analysis by which I took the decision.
Okay. And You mentioned that basically you solve the problem of rendering in local languages,
Yeah,
but that does not create content in the local languages.
yeah,
So how did you ensure content creation in the local languages at
yeah,
that time?
yeah. So again, if you rewind back, way back in 2011 and 12, there was enough offline content in the country. So, and I mean, you had Dainik Jagran, Dainik Bhaskar, Amar Ujala, Dinatanti, Kannada Prabha, you had, Matrabhumi, Malayalam Manorma. You had a lot of content from Kashmir to Kanyakumari to from Gujarat to, I would say Assam. There was a lot of offline content available. What was not available was that content being available online. What we did was we basically solved this problem where the publisher of the content had to do nothing to get his content online. We built connectors and OCR where his content as is would be available on our app. So we made it frictionless for those people, and that's why we found that people came in loads and loads, on our app to partner with us.
Okay. So there is one question from audience. Okay. So is there a way to curate news? Okay. How do you ensure that fake news does not pop in?
So it's again a good question, right? And I think the biggest thing about, I would say, we are a news aggregator, and what we do is we partner with a lot of verified content partners. And today, I'll talk about in my next slides that how we scaled from having 2 partners when we launched in 2011-12 to about having 100,000 content partners today who are giving different kinds of content, to us. So what we do is we have a lot of, verified, we have all the marquee publishers, which are there on our platform. And our AI and ML basically gives a lot of weightage to verified people when it comes to core news, right? And then we get a lot of feedback on our app in terms of signals where people call it fake or irrelevant and other things. So all that goes into algorithms to pop up, hopefully the right kind of news, which is applicable to the users.
Okay. So there is one question about your startup again. Okay.
Yeah.
So how did you manage to bring people together when you started? So
Yeah.
do you have like-minded partners?
Yeah. So I think it's a it's a great question, and I love this question because it's eventually about that, where you have people who are as restless as you are, and I had I had my first co-founder in way back when I was in Trilogy. He was a great coder, and he could kind of build a system overnight, right? And he was also wanting to do something which was disruptive, and we both kind of got along very, very well. And then we got a lot of young people from Trilogy as our initial engineers who all were wanting to solve problems and build products. So I think you need to align with people on 2 things. Of course, when you start up, you don't have a lot of money. By the way, it's changed a lot right now, but I would say what has not changed, and mark my words on that. What has not changed is the value system which you have with your team and what value system you build with your team. And that's going to be the key thing. Startups can't be built just for the sake of great outcomes. Startups need to be built and started with a mission to solve a problem. The problem can be good, bad, ugly, it doesn't matter. But unless and until there's a mission and your initial members are not aligned and are devoted to that mission, you will never be successful. So I would say raising money has become an easier problem, but finding a problem statement and a mission and getting team to be aligned with that mission is the bigger problem. So I would say, people aligning with values and mission, and you practicing that values and mission on a daily basis with your initial team, it will hold you, for a long run. And by the way, let me tell you that even after doing it for 15 years, the team which is involved, I mean, I have team which has stayed with me for long. I mean, those teams have evolved with the business. I've evolved with the business. And these are the teams. We have got a lot of lateral addition to the team, from Yahoo's, from Microsoft, from Google, from Adobe. But the core team still plays a very, very huge role in building the product. And I think that shows the quality of how people have evolved and their commitment to the business.
Okay. Deepankar has an interesting question. He feels that, okay, local language reachability is extremely powerful, basically. So you can help them when you reach them in local languages. You can also help them basically with the learning and their learnability, improving their learnability also. So how can they use your services to improve themselves?
Yeah. So I think local language is a very, very big market, right? And there are many products and solutions which can be built to solve that problem. I will tell you the kind of feedback which we used to get from people. People say, I'm preparing for a government exam, right, in Tripur. And I'm so glad that Dailyhunt is giving me information where I'm keeping abreast of all the information which is happening in the world. During good old days, people used to say, what I read in newspaper tomorrow morning, I'm getting it right now. A large part of people who use our product, which is aggregation of information and news, use it to keep them abreast, and not only to show themselves as being smart people, but people use it for solving for government exams, right? So we are an information store where people come and customize their feed and engage with it and use it. I think there could be multiple products being built on that, where you can solve for, and there are companies which have been built to, let's say, solve for English learning, solve for learning something else, right? But I think the core principle here is that local language is here to stay, and with a lot of exams now happening in local language, I feel this area is going to grow multiple bounds, and companies and people who are building products in this space will flourish.
Okay. Dr. Veeru, there are few more questions from young entrepreneurs asking your suggestions in different domain, basically. But
Sure.
we will keep these questions for the end. Maybe some of these questions may get cleared in the rest of the presentations. Maybe you can continue with the presentation.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I'm going to make the next half a little bit short because it's more technical and more, and I'll keep some good amount of time for Q&A because I also enjoy Q&A more than anything else. So just a quick recap. We spoke about the journey. We spoke about what led to where I ended up, very interesting pivotal moments in the history of company, and they continue to happen, by the way, and I'll talk about a few of them. But just to recap the few challenges which we faced, building that business and building this product, and which I'm sure most of the entrepreneurs face. I think one thing is that when you go out and build something, there are 100 reasons which people will tell you why it cannot happen, right? So for us, one of the key things which people said that internet is only a metro phenomenon. Internet cannot work in Bharat. Internet need not be in local languages. So and I think it's our conviction about this market. It's about the conviction and cultural, I would say, upbringing where we had been brought up in those places, and we somehow knew that there's a market which exists, which eventually will come online and use it. I think that was the key conviction which helped us during that part. I think second part, I touched upon it briefly, that when Jio happened, you had companies both from East and West coming and basically putting a lot of money on the table. There were companies like Alibaba, Tencent, which from China, and they had like 100x, 1000x more money than us. They had huge engineering stack, but what they didn't understand was the Indian consumer psyche. So I would say, it's very important to know your consumer. While we all say in this tech world, I think tech can give you all answers. But if you don't have a starting hypothesis, or if you don't know what your consumer wants, then you can never build a product. So I would say one of the big thing, which we, by which we could fight the global giant, and it's typical David versus Goliath fight, was we understood the pulse of consumers. We stuck to our ground. And let me give you some anecdotes here that when in 2016, when Jio was happening, and the whole market became very big, everybody said video is the next big thing. And every VC, I would say, every other company would say, everybody should just move to video. And everybody said everybody should just move to entertainment and clickbaity kind of content, because that's what the Chinese companies were trying to infuse in the country at that point of time. And of course, YouTube and Facebook were also growing and were kind of fueling that growth. We very well knew that news is a different kind of product. News is a product which family consumes. My typical user is a middle-class Indian who is either a retailer or who is a Punjab National Bank PO officer or a teacher whose phone is being used by his family, by his kids, and who uses content to get informed and well educated. We took a hard stance that we will not put any racy, raunchy content on news and Dailyhunt. We'll have videos which are relevant and will not play this game. By the way, we were kind of, people said you guys are not forward thinking and you guys are not in tune with the market. But, we stuck to our guns because that was the consumer psyche and information we had. And that played out for us. So Alibaba had a product called UC News, which was all about, racy, raunchy content and which was not safe. And they had to shut shop even before, India banned Chinese apps because the users didn't stick cord with the consumers. So it's a very, very important point, which I want to say is, if you're building a product, please go out and have your own hypothesis of touching base with consumer and knowing what the consumer wants. I think the second, the third point here is, and I was asked this question, in the break, that what about getting the right people? Again, a lot of, Bangalore being an offshore center and a lot of, MNCs coming here, there was a huge fight for talent. And again, attracting talent was the big job which I had and the company's, senior leadership had, was to sell your mission and vision and give them an experience which they cannot find in any other company. And then, we went through some tough times in terms of COVID, recession, and, and building a great AI engine. But I would say, these were a few of the challenges which we faced during the journey. And with each challenge and with each fire, I think the company and the team has come out more strong. So now coming to the, the core topic, I would say, talking about the journey, talking about how we landed up where we are, and building the business. And I would say that as we look at this business, and some of these numbers are dated because, I've not updated this sheet. I'm not, allowed to give my latest numbers out here, but this will give you a gist of what we do. But basically, to build any content business in the country, and I'm going to zoom out, not only for us, but also for any person who's looking to build a large content business. I think the first thing is, it's very important to figure out what your target segment is. And to us, we were serving a differentiated and an underserved demographic. And I spoke about it, that we were serving the middle of the Bharat. So India has three big, demographic. I think if you imagine India as a fish, there's a head of the fish, which is about 150 to 200 million people, which are basically rich people, have high disposable income, and mainly English-speaking people. And then you have, I would say, the belly of the fish, which is about 700 to 800 million people, who is the middle of Bharat. And then you have a rural population, which is the rest of the India, which is basically low-income people. And hopefully, with the growth of India, which it is projected in coming years, they would come out. They would come into, the belly of. They would come into the middle belly and into the consuming population. Our focus was very clear that we are targeting the belly of India, and this is middle of the Bharat is where we were building business. We were targeting, and our all decisions, be it product, be it content, be it marketing, be it positioning, had that picture in mind, where we were serving the middle of the Bharat. The second thing we did was very, very nicely was, what is the content library you need to cater to this middle of Bharat? When we started, as I mentioned, we had two publishers. In 2011-12, we had two publishers. In 2016, we had 800 publishers. We went about doing plumbing of publishers from north to south, east to west. And it took a lot of time for us to go and convince publishers to put their content on us. Then from 2016 till 2018, we grew from 800 publishers to 100,000 publishers. And the reason we grew it was because the flywheel of our product started happening. We created a lot of self-help tools. We created a monetization engine for creators. We got a lot of consumers which were demanding a lot of content creators. And this two-way flywheel or two-way marketplace, as I would say, led to a massive explosion of content creators on our platform. So not only do we have all the big publishers of content, we have a lot of small publishers, a lot of individual creators, a lot of stringers, and a lot of people who write content not only about news, but who write content about technology in Malayalam, who write content about women issues in Tamil, who write content about taboos in Hindi, who would write about stock tips in Gujarati, if I may use that, as an example. So today, in our platform, we have 100,000 creators who are creating content on our platform. And that is a big, big sustainable difference we have, which nobody has. The third thing we built was, and that's, I would say, a key thing, but look, tech is getting disrupted at a very, very fast pace, which one can't imagine. We built a very large, I would say, a state-of-the-art, AI and machine learning engine. And I'm going to talk about that machine learning engine in the next few slides. But with the growth of content creators and growth of users, one of the key challenge was to train your models so that you can surface the right kind of content for right user, and thereby driving engagement, and thereby creating a huge flywheel of engagement and monetization eventually. So we spent a lot of time and effort, and we have a team in India, we have a team in US, which is building the state-of-the-art AI and machine learning models. Of course, with the latest developments in LLM, a lot of this has become, I would say, there's a lot of disruption happening in this space. But I'm happy to take some questions around that. But I think building an AI and ML engine is not only about models, but it's a lot more beyond models, and we'll talk about that. Fourthly, we built a very strong, I would say, ad tech engine, and which none of the publishers or none of aggregators have in this country. Typically, most of the people who today are monetizing through advertising are using Google or Facebook ad engine. So we built an ad tech engine, which was built on principles of performance, optimization, maximization, and self-serve. That coupled with a great sales team on the ground led to create a large local language ad business in this country. Today, if you look at it, if you leave aside Google, Facebook, and Hotstar, we are the fourth largest ad business in the country around local language users. So at a very broad level, there is no one single bullet to create a large content business in this country. What we have seen is the things which have worked for us is, first is a great stellar team and people who are committed to mission and vision. Second was we had a very clear positioning in terms of which target market and target users are we addressing. And that led to making sure that our efforts are in a very, very sharp direction. Going and mining a large pool of content creators of multi varieties, multiple genres, multiple formats, which led to huge amount of entropy in the platform. Coupling it with a large and one of the best AI and ML engine in the country led to great amount of engagement and platform, which led to monetization through an ad tech and a sales team to a point where we are going to do about $250 million revenues in FY24. So broadly, these were the 6, I would say, vectors and things which went into creating a large business which we have today in the country. I'm going to run through a few slides, which talks about, how the product evolved over a period of time. And again, this is also very interesting, and it's very important that, that people who are building businesses should be very, very true to their customers. So again, I'll go back to 2011 and 12. There were no 2.5 there were no 3G networks. Today we're talking about 5G networks. There were only 2.5G networks. And the product decision we took was that we are going to have simple cards. We're not going to have heavy images because people need content to consume. People don't need fancy experience. And then we would, when people would then compare us with Flipboard. I don't know whether people Flipboard, but way back in 2011-12, if you were open, or maybe 13-14, if you open Flipboard, in a Wi-Fi network, it would give you a great experience. But the moment you step out of your room and go on a 2G network, if you try to open a Flipboard, by the time even Flipboard one page would load, people would have consumed 100 pages on our Dailyhunt. So we built a product which was very, very light in terms of, I would say, overloads of tech, data exchange, and which could load very fast. And that helped us a great, deal in getting market share at that period of time. As markets evolved, as the networks became better, as we moved to 3G, 4G, we moved to a more holistic multimedia feed and in tune with the customer demands, in tune with demands, in tune with what the network support, and in tune with what kind of content was created. So our product has evolved over a period of time, and recently we have launched a totally new experience on Dailyhunt, which is called Espresso, and that is a large size immersible cards. It is to target the new target segments of young people who want to use news and be informed. So I think the moot point where I'm saying is, you can't just sit on one idea and stay with it. As the market and the ecosystem evolves, you got to keep on evolving your product to be in tune with the times, or sometimes lead it, to make sure you have a great product market fit. Spoke about the second pivot, which was content creators. We moved from 800 content creators to about 100K content creators. Today this is a bit dated slide, but broadly, we have 25% of content on our Dailyhunt is news, 30% is entertainment, lifestyle, and 45% is hyperlocal, sports, and astro. And this wide mix of content is helping us serve hundreds and millions of customers to their needs, and also helping a wide variety of content creators to come on platform and express their creativity. I'm going to skip a few slides on recommendation engine, but just broadly, this is a bit more theoretical slide, but anybody who's writing a recommendation engine would know that any state-of-the-art recommendation engine requires, it's a two-sided, I would say, problem. One is there's a huge amount of content which is coming into your system, and you need to have ways to understand the content in terms of not only the metadata, but in terms of embeds, in terms of interest graphs, in terms of key entities, in terms of NER, and then tag the content with multiple tags so that you can enrich your content and understand that this content is made of a lot of atomic things which can be used by algorithm. On the other side is the consumer interaction and consumer profile with this content. At what point of time, what kind of consumers interact with what kind of content. And when you fuse both the things, when the algorithms runs on the content attributes and on the consumer's interaction with that content, there's a feed which gets generated, and that feed in real-time loop keeps on going back to the algorithm to recommend the next best card and next best card to user as he's consuming the feed. So we have a state-of-the-art recommendation system. There's a lot more in this. What I've put here, my tech guys and my AI and ML guys have, they say it's a state-of-the-art system with a trained on large petabytes of data with a huge data pipeline. The engineering infrastructure here is massive, and we are able to, with the help of this, we are able to curate a unique, diversified, curated experience for every users, thereby users spending 34 minutes per day on our platform. These are some details about what kind of enrichment happens in the content side. And I'm going to skip a few slides in the interest of time. There are multiple ranking models which work on these platforms. People who are engineers on this call would know, DNN, two tower, LR, CF based models. I think it's very important to kind of know here what kind of problems are you solving for your product. It's not only about horizontal, algorithms and engine. Our key learning here is, as you're building a great recommendation engine, I think the first thing is you need to have a very robust pipeline, data pipeline, and you need to be able to have somebody, your best guys, checking the veracity of data which is getting passed into the engine, because algorithms are garbage in, garbage out. So you got to figure out what are the parameters, what are the vectors, which are getting captured from the interaction of users with your product, and the right kind of information is getting passed into the system. And then you got to figure out what are the strategies you have or you want to solve for a consumer. In a content business, typically there are 3 or 4 strategies which you need to solve for. One thing is you got to solve for a cold start. You got to solve for a cold start because you don't know what the user wants when he's coming on the platform. So you got to have some hypotheses and some strategies and some algorithm to solve for cold start. Second thing is you got to be able to have a great machine learning engine and great I would say algorithms to detect what kind of content understanding you have and marry it with the user's profile and interaction, and in real time recommend articles to him. And the third thing is you should be able to figure out a way where you're not over personalizing the feed of a consumer. You need to be able to have a way to get in and get out from a loop of over personalization, and therefore you need to be able to explore and exploit the interests of users and recommend new cards and new interests over a period of time. All this leads to a huge amount of, I would say, data science and huge amount of algorithmic work, which eventually happens through iteration. It's not that you create and code one big model and feed data and your life is solved. Our experience is it keeps on, you got to be on your toes. You need to continuously iterate, tweak models, tweak parameters, generate hypotheses, and keep on increasing engagement over a period of time. So this was about Dailyhunt recommendation system. The Josh recommendation system is, I would say, much more complex because it's a UGC platform. Through computer vision, deep learning, and signal processing, we are able to detect audio quality, creator quality, background of people in video, genres, emotions, and video quality in a video. We are able to also do a lot of moderation because of our algorithms and take out NSFW content from the content which users load. Now, all this content, the UGC content which gets into the user's feed, then interacts with the user's behavior and history, and we generate a unique feed of 10 cards every time user interacts with the with the app. And then we have multi-arm banded algorithms which exploit and explore the interests of users to continuously give him engage on the platform. Again, I would say, as I said earlier, while tech is a key part of it, I think I would say anybody who's building this kind of platforms for their business, I think it's very, very important to have a strong engineering and data pipeline, organization to be able to do this nicely. That's the first thing I would say. Second thing is you need to be able to capture user interaction and history in a very, very true fashion, because any kind of wrong information which is fed into algorithms would lead to a wrong result. Third thing I would say is, of course, you need to have great AI ML guys who are using good algorithms, but a lot of these algorithms are out there. And I think the key challenge is how do you use those algorithms for your business? So continuously iterating and continuously building on it and keeping an eye on it and figuring out what problem do you want to solve is going to be key thing in leading to your end goals. I'm going to skip, a few things here, but again, the algorithm of the tech stack of Josh is, I would say, state of the art, on par with major FANG companies. Given the scale we have, the big problem we have solved for and continuously solving for is how do you do all this in a very, very fast timeline? So basically, you could make a good recommendation engine and you could do some queries on content. if you have only 50 pieces of content and if you only have 100 users. But if you got to do this at hundreds of millions of users and hundreds and millions of content and videos, how do you do it in real time? Because the users are very punishing. They want a content which is engaging, and they want a content which is changing with every action of theirs on the platform. And there, I would say a lot of core work has gone in terms of, fast candidate searching using vector databases, training a lot of these platforms in offline and then taking them online, having an offline feed ready to serve immediately when the user comes, and changing it very, very fast as user gives signals, and having a great GPU infrastructure and being able to retrieve results and predict actions and predict the feed based on user actions are a few of the things which we have solved for Josh platform. This is a repetition of what I spoke about, but at a very, very broad level, I think both in Josh and Dailyhunt, I think the key challenge is you have a lot of content and you have a lot of users. On the content side, the job of algorithm is to say, hey, which are the top 300 candidates for this kind of customer? And from the customer profile side, we got to figure out what is the customer looking for at that point of time when he comes on the platform. Then you marry both the things, and you're continuously personalizing and continuously taking feedback loop from user and continuously looking at what is happening for other users and creating a feed which is most likely to be the best feed of users. And mind you, it looks very simplistic on a slide, but it's hell lot of work. And I think this is one of the biggest moat we have built in our business. Contrary to what is the popular opinion, people may say LLM has disrupted this. But look, of course, LLM has disrupted some part of it. But to do this in a real time at a production scale and to continuously iterate, I think is the secret sauce. Of course, I agree, models beyond our time are becoming commodity in this market. I'm happy to take some questions around this, in the session after this. Broadly, we spoke about the next mode we have, which was about revenue maximization and creating an ad tech platform. Our ad tech platform is again state-of-the-art platform. It maximizes revenue via real-time bidding and auction. It supports all kind of auctions and demand, be it direct, self-serve, or through third party. Now, given that we are able to get the best demand for the ad slot, the platform also optimizes for the best results, that which slot should I give to which user in this ad to get best results. So both these things help us maximize ARPU per customer. And then we have a great ad sales team, which again go and work with agencies and brands to maximize our revenue. We follow all the industry standards in terms of, I would say global standards in terms of reporting and viewability metric to make sure we are providing best value to the customer. So doing all this broadly, we're having a great team, having a great content supply, having a great machine learning and ML tech stack, having a great ad engine, having a sales team which can go and monetize, has led to us creating a valuable business, in this space, where, by FY28, we are projecting a revenue of about $1.6 billion, generating an EBITDA of 37%. Today, we are in a revenue range of about $200 to $300 million. Given that both these products, Dailyhunt and Josh, are doing great, Dailyhunt is already EBITDA positive. Josh will get EBITDA positive in the next 15 months. Public Wipe is promising a new kid on the block, going deep into the hyperlocal. We believe it's a lifetime opportunity for people in the company to create a made in India, made for India product, and give a stiff competition to global biggies in this tough content space. So, few learnings of life as you build all this is, entrepreneurship is a long journey. It's not a short journey. So you got to make sure your health is fine. You will go through various stressful moments. I did an ABC track a few years back, and basically pushing yourself to do something which is different. have a lot of fun, have a lot of friends. Of course, be serious about your business, but don't be, just don't take yourself too serious. Have moments to ease out, and having, my wife and my kids, always supporting me relentlessly. That's been a great, I would say, support to build this business and be in the journey for so long. So thank you. I'm happy to take any questions, and please stay in touch. Mail me at virendra.gupta@verse.in, and I wish you all a lot of good luck.
Thanks, Dr. Viru. So my first question is, you started very small basically, and then you started adding more and more features to your app also. Okay, so every new venture requires huge funding, basically to add infrastructure, manpower, and things like that. So how do you manage raising funding for all these ventures?
See, I think so. Very good question again, I would say, and I think nobody is born with any such skill of raising money. My father was a professor of physics, right? I was working in a company building products. I think a key thing about entrepreneurship is you learn whatever is required to do for business, right? And you fail many times till you perfect it. So got rejected by a lot of VCs, in terms of early on, in terms of what our business meant to be. But I would say the key thing which happens I would say in any business, and I can talk about my business, is the moment you start showing some momentum, and the moment you start showing improvement, and the moment you start showing results, I think you attract a lot of right kind of capital onto your business. And then you also complement your team and people with people who can do multiple things, right?
Okay.
And that creates, I would say, a very strong moat in your business. Right? Let's say if I don't like doing sales, my co-founder might like doing sales. Let's say my co-founder doesn't like building products, I might like building products. If somebody would like pitching to VC, he would do that job better. So I would say, as an entrepreneur, you got to do whatever it takes, which is important to keep your business growing and moving. But I think the biggest thing is keep the momentum in the business. Make sure you're improving, make sure you're showing results. Rest everything can happen.
Okay. And can you a bit elaborate on the role of AI and ML language models that you are using, especially when you are doing content aggregation? What is the role of these language models in that?
Yeah. So look, so language model was more from how language model LLM has disrupted use of AI and ML, right? Where even a person who doesn't know too much of algorithms and data science can use those models. But I think where we spent a lot of time over years was we had a lot. We were so aggregation doesn't require AI ML. Aggregation requires crawling technology and partnerships, which we built early on, as I told you in life, right? Then, since we had repository of so much data, we built language models to train AI ML on those language models, right? So I think we were early people who had huge petabytes of data on local language content, and that's how our models were very, very sharper than a lot of other companies, right? And over a period of time, those models have scaled, become better with more data and user profile. And of course, we have used state-of-the-art technology and state-of-the-art models which have come over a period of time. To us, that's been a key, I would say, differentiating point, because we had the framework and the pipeline, starting from aggregation to data pipeline to content enrichment to algorithms and AB framework. We have been able to plug in new developments in models very, very seamlessly and consume them to improve our retentions and cohorts on our business.
Okay. So do you plan to use these nowadays language translators are coming up basically. So do you have plans to use, or are you already using in content creation in different languages from using translators, automatic translators?
So see, our core belief, honestly,
Okay.
core belief was one of the core belief which we have in the company is to generate a lot of, I would say, employment for small time, creators and small time entrepreneurs, right? On both sides. So we have a lot of creators, both on Dailyhunt on all the three products, Dailyhunt, Josh, and Public Life. Right? These are let's say a stringer on Public Life is creating a video in, let's say, in Marwadi, or he's creating a video in Haryanvi, or in, I would say, in Tamil, right? Similarly, there are individual writers who are sitting in remote parts of the country and writing content about culture of Assam, or about a festival in Orissa, or about the women issues in some other place, if I'm using that example, right? So our core thesis has been to first, how do you mine the originality and the
Okay.
human imagination which is out there, and get that on the platform on all the three products, Dailyhunt, Josh, and Public Life. India is a country with so much diversity and so much talent that I think, machine translation to me is a good technical problem, and you can feel happy about it. But I don't know how much value it adds in terms of a business.
Okay.
It's a solution which is in need of a problem in a business.
Okay. Okay, so one more question is about basically you have to create user specific content basically by making the recommendation. So how do you manage this recommendations of user specific content without actually encroaching into their privacy?
That's again a very good question, right? And I was, and I missed that. I missed explaining that part, in my recommendation engine. So we work only on content graph. We don't take any, demographic information of user or any specific information of the user. What we know is, let's say, these are sets of users who have interacted with this set of content. We know nothing else about a user. And the interaction is what creates a graph, content graph in our system, right? And that is what we use for recommendations. So we are unlike Facebook or YouTube, which are built on social graph, where I'm taking your personal information, I'm taking your friend's information, and then building a graph. We don't take anything. We say you come on the app, you use it. You could use my app without logging in. Only when you go, or you do some actions which are specific, which are required by government, regulatory bodies to take information of login, is when we take the information. Otherwise, our algorithms are primarily based on your interaction and content graph of the user.
Okay. So some of the audience are asking for your suggestions on starting new entrepreneurships, basically, or if they wanted to get into entrepreneurship. So one question from Ganeshan is, I wanted to get into agri-based startup.
Yeah.
Okay. How to proceed? What are the things that I have to start with?
So honestly, I think I would say for any startup, be it anything, right? I think one thing is you need to know the problem statement. Do you know a problem statement which you're solving? I think startup is an answer. Is there a problem statement which you think you have stumbled upon or you have experienced? Is that problem statement close to your heart, or you have some data to prove that this problem statement is a valid problem? Third thing is, without thinking too much, start building a small solution for that problem statement. Okay. And if you can't build it alone, have some people and friends and family, be a hustler, but build something around it and put it out and see what happens. Don't think too much about it, I would say. Okay. And I don't know what you are, who you are, what's your age, whether you're young, old, you're already working somewhere. But for any idea to come to a fruitfulness, you have to build it or you have to reject it. There are no two ways. There's no middle path there. So I would say, if you think there's an idea, and but again, I would say, please don't do it for, you got to look at your, your personal situation also to do a startup, because a lot of people get burnt out in an attempt to do something very, very big. So it is very contextual. I'm happy to guide you offline, but eventually it's your decision, but you don't look at it holistically as you jump into it.
So we need to look at competition also when we are going for any startup. So in your case, in your personal experience, can you tell who are the competitors for you, and what did you do to stay basically novel compared to the competitors?
Yeah. So I think when I started, the biggest competition which I had was how do I migrate offline reading to online reading? Because way back there were no websites or publishers, right? There was no YouTube, there was no, Google didn't have local language support, right? In my case, it happened opposite. People caught up with our, because the West was and China was ahead of India in terms of tech. Right? They could import a lot of their things very fast once they got to know local language is big thing. So in my case, what it happened, where we thought of a local language market and we thought of solving a local language font problem and build a business around it. Since we were small and we didn't have enough capital and we didn't know how to build tech businesses because India, we were what we were, right? We were taking time. A lot of people caught up with us, right? So that's one I would say. Second thing is, I think we went deep into all the 6 modes which I spoke to you about to be relevant and to go deep and build sustainable differentiation. I spoke to you about content, where we had two content creators. We went from 2 to 800, 800 to 100,000. So we went deep into content creation. We went deep into AI and machine learning, correct? We went deep into creating ad tech engine. We went deep into having great sales team. We went deep into, moving from a 2G product to 2.5G product to a 3G product to a 4G product to a multimedia product to a social product to an immersive product. Right? We went deep into launching Josh to complement local language user time spent. We said, okay, Dailyhunt is one use case, let's launch Josh, this short video. And then eventually we launched Public Buy, where we say, okay, now you need a hyperlocal content for people. There are sets of users who want hyperlocal content. How do you give it to them? So these are the few things which we did through constant pivot and constant evolution to stay relevant in the market.
Okay. So I have one general question, not just related to Dailyhunt. Okay. Any of these app creators or content creators, basically, they will try to make their users addictive to their content or the apps.
Yeah.
Okay. So how healthy is that scenario for the young generation?
Yeah.
What are the ethical issues that one needs to keep in mind while creating such kind of content? And do you think that government needs to moderate this? Because as faculty members at institutes, we find it very, very difficult to manage when such things are available online.
I think it's a great question. We grapple with this issue every day. I'll answer it in many parts, and I don't know which part will appeal to you, but I'll tell you what we have done. I think one is we have taken a call at a very clear level that we will always comply with the law of the land.
Okay.
I'm not making the law of the land. Okay. I'm following the law of the land. So we have created tools and we have investment in manpower in terms of moderation team, which is extra cost for us to make sure that we are complying with the law of the land. Now, whatever the law of land says, we do it. We are also part of regulatory bodies, self-regulatory bodies, and thinking bodies which help government shape the rules of this. Right? So that's first thing I would say. Second thing is in terms of taking personal ethical stance, and I think that's a part of your question, right? Is how do you do that, right? So there I think it's a very gray area, I would say, where you have to blur the line between your personal values to the business you are doing, and like driving car, you're saying I'm launching a car, and this is what eventually all engineering is coming from universities now. In universities are working on making CPUs faster. Universities are working on making engines faster. But are we saying that cars should not go above speed of 60 or 70? I'm just making an example, right? So in my mind, that's a tougher question, right? What we do is our Dailyhunt platform is a very clean, middle class family platform, which I told you about, right? Josh is a bit more youthful, entertaining platform, which I would say is like Instagram, YouTube, where you find all kind of content. Public Buy is again very, very local content, talking about issues, crime, health, elections, So we broadly are at a very, very, I would say we are broadly on the good side of content ecosystem, I would say. to the question you asked.
Suppose if we ask for your suggestions on policy making, basically on these issues,
Yeah.
being in this area for a long time, what suggestions do you give? What are the main things that the government has to take care?
Yeah. So I think there are long-term implications on what the long-term implications on freedom of speech, freedom of content viewing versus
Okay.
what you think is good for others, right? And I think
Okay.
it's very, very important that that one looks at it, and there should be regulation which is common for global companies and local companies. It's very,
Okay.
very important, right? There cannot be a difference between a global company and a. I mean, Netflix has got all sorts of things in our bedroom, right? You know, in some sort of other, right? So I think these are tough questions. I would say, you know, we can have a separate chat on it, but
Okay.
we grapple with these issues every day, and we try
Okay.
to do as much right as possible.
Okay. So on a lighter note, there is one question from Mr. Deepankar. So what happened to your landlord? Did he become a shareholder in your company?
So look, I don't have famous stories like Silicon Valley. You know,
Okay.
this was way back in 2007. You know, it took me a lot of time to build this business, but you know, I always remember him. He's been very kind. Look, I mean, our company valuation actually started flowing through when Geo launched. From 2007 to 2016, you know, we were still a small company, navigating and building businesses, right? So I'm sure he's very happy, and I'm sure he's doing great. He used to run a steel business, and he was a very big person.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much for patiently asking all our questions. So now I will hand it over to my co-moderator, Dr. Sushila, for wrapping it up.
Thank you very much. I think this was a morning very well spent. You know, Viru, you started by saying that, or along the way you were talking about how you took advantage of a lot of disruptions. And I just wanted to point out that you yourself have disrupted a lot of existing paradigms and what's going on. Thank you very much for sharing this, you know, this whole journey and what it has called for with us this morning. And many thanks to our audience Sunday morning for being here and for actively engaging in the conversation. So just a few takeaways, a little bit of a summary. Today we looked at a clutch of 3 platforms, service offerings: Dailyhunt, Josh, which is the fastest growing short video app, and Public Vibe, which is a hyperlocal news platform. Somewhere along the way, we kind of understood that some things never change. One of them is that customer focus can just never go away. I mean, it has been that, and it has been that forever. Another point is that the thirst for knowledge and information is something that is very innate to us humans and cats, by the way. But you know, that's something which is, again, not going to go away. Curiosity in terms of what is happening and what's going on around the world is, again, an important aspect of our existence. And therefore, what you did was really understand that, and create a whole business opportunity around that understanding of human behavior. You also pointed out that the largest newspapers in India are really not the English newspapers, but Dainik Bhaskar, Dainik Jagaran, Malayalam Manorama. I was quite intrigued to find that in the top group of 4. At the IITACB, we've always held that inclusion means local languages are just as important. And one of the big projects that we've taken up is in local languages. So therefore, for us, this particular talk was something that was very relevant and very important to our understanding of what makes India. and what is going to take us further from here. One of the first problems that you set up, to solve, set on to solve, was the rendering of local language fonts rendering. But from there, you've moved a long distance, and that journey. Thank you so much for sharing that whole journey with us as to how exactly the business evolved and where we've gotten to today. Again, thanks for also sharing your own personal journey. I think it's always valuable for us, for everybody to know about it, but especially for aspiring entrepreneurs to really understand what it takes to create a successful business. You talked about the issues in setting up and scaling the business and making it what it is today. But most importantly, you talked about taking risks in an area that is fraught with, or in which you face a 99% failure rate. And what does it take to get that kind of conviction and courage to really stay with a problem, stay with an issue, and see it through in terms of creating a whole business? A few pivots that you talked about, some personal, but also, for example, COVID and the ban on Chinese apps, Jio's disruption of the telecom market, both in terms of the handset and in terms of internet cost, mobile internet cost, how it opened up, how that disruption opened up to populations who could not have dreamt of access to the internet, or indeed what it meant to have access to the internet. I remember when we worked 15 years ago with groups of people in rural Karnataka, they really didn't understand why or what was important of something like this. Today, it's so natural, which is what you also see in the invitation that we've sent out, the graphic that's in the invitation we sent out. And then we heard several tips in terms of what it takes to build a successful business of this kind. Understanding the consumer extremely well seems to be top and center of the whole discussion. People, and it was very encouraging to hear you say that there are many young people who want to build products here, and that's a shift again. But it's a very encouraging shift, because it means that we have an opportunity as India to move forward hugely as to become global leaders. But it's not just about having people, it's also about having a value system that the team adheres to, one that is foundational to the organization and stays that way. The importance of staying focused on your chosen area and your target market. In your case, that is what you call the belly of the fish. And what did that do? It opened up questions like, we need to work on building a platform that will work on Apache 2G experience. But what the result of all of that is really that Dailyhunt has shown that building a product for the lowest common denominator can result in a global winner, something that pushes the envelope for everybody, for all platforms globally, because you've shown how something like this can be built and sustained and be successful on the thinnest of available resources. You talked about also the importance of domain knowledge and the willingness to stay and evolve with what is happening, not just in technology, within the organization, with the consumer, and with the environment. The importance of keeping the core team, your family and friends around you, and that is something we hear with every single entrepreneurial journey. You don't need to invent everything from scratch. For example, you said there are many algorithms that are available there. How do you use them? And thereby you're leapfrogging rather than trying to build everything on your own. And the outcome of all of this has been that you have a world-class tech platform with a best-in-class AI, ML, tech stack, with a wonderful ad tech engine, a unique curation and personalization, immersion experience. especially knowing that what the customer who's coming in, you know very little about them. They're coming in cold, you don't know who they are, you don't know what they want, and yet you've built an engine that allows them to get content, to address them in terms of in an online, instantaneous manner, changing expectations also, and to be able to serve as an unknown user what is required. So for me, that is probably the biggest takeaway from today's session. And it's not just about technology, of course, it's all about people, whether they're content creators, publishers, your own team, people around you, the consumers. It's really about people and how people and technology come together to create a huge amount of magic. And finally, we did have a discussion around ethics and how do you know what is the right thing? And how do you know what to do to make sure that you are doing the right thing? So wonderful presentation, great interaction. So thank you to the audience for your questions and for being here. Of course, many thanks to Sriram for again taking time off to add a lot of value to this discussion and moderating today's discussion. Viru, thank you for being here and so readily accepting to speak to our webinar user audiences. So thank you very much and look forward to seeing you at our next webinar in a couple of weeks' time. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.